I'll never forget that night. I was standing at the doorway of my son Xavier's house, quiet as a mouse, my hand covering my mouth so I wouldn't gasp out loud. What I saw through the half-open bedroom door shook me to my core. There was Xavier, my only son, the boy I raised with love and patience, sitting on the edge of the bed looking like a stranger. And right next to him, his wife, Angela. But it wasn't just them. The way they spoke, the words I overheard, it didn't sound like the marriage I thought they had. It sounded like something darker, something twisted, something that made me question everything I thought I knew about my son and the woman he married. I remember Angela saying, "If your mother ever finds out, it'll all come crashing down." And then Xavier whispered back, "Don't worry. She won't. She trusts me too much." My knees almost gave way. Trust. That was the word he used. Trust. After everything I had sacrificed. I wanted to barge in, demand answers, but my heart told me to stay still. I had to know more. I had to watch. So I hid. I stayed in the shadows, my breath shallow, listening, watching. What I saw next made me feel like my whole world had been turned upside down. But before I tell you what happened, let me pause here for a second. Hello everyone. Welcome to today's story. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. You never know, I might give you a shout out in the next video. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy suspenseful stories like this. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back to where this story really began. It all started months before that night, in a small town in Ohio where I lived. My name is Nancy, and I'm a 62-year-old widow. My husband, God rest his soul, passed away 7 years ago, and since then, my only real family has been my son Xavier. He was my pride and joy, the one who used to hold my hand on our walks to church, the boy who would tell me, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of you someday." And for the most part, he did. Or at least I thought he did. Xavier was always bright. He was the kind of boy who would help old neighbors shovel snow in the winter without asking for a dime. People loved him, and I was proud of how he grew up. He went to college, got a decent job, and soon enough, he met Angela. She was pretty, smart, and polite, or at least that's how she appeared. I welcomed her with open arms. I thought she was the daughter I never had. But let me tell you, sometimes kindness blinds us. Sometimes being too trusting makes us miss the warning signs. At first, everything seemed fine. They got married in a small church, nothing fancy, just close friends and family. I remember Angela smiling as she said her vows, her voice sweet as honey. Xavier looked at her like she was the sun, and the stars rolled into one. I told myself, this is it. My son is happy. My family is complete. For a while, that was enough. But slowly, I began to notice things. Angela would speak to me with this edge in her voice when Xavier wasn't around. She'd say things like, "Nancy, don't you think it's time you sold your house and moved closer to us? It'd be easier for everyone." Or, "You don't really need all those old things, do you? They're just taking up space." It was subtle, but I felt it. That push, that pressure. It wasn't just care, it was control. I brushed it off because I didn't want to believe anything bad about her. I told myself she was just stressed, adjusting to married life. But then, one afternoon, my friend Priska pulled me aside at the grocery store. Priska was one of those women who always seemed to know everything before anyone else. She leaned in close, her eyes darting left and right, and whispered, "Nancy, I heard something strange about your son and his wife." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. Priska sighed. "It's just people are talking. About money. About the way Angela treats him. Some even say she has a hold over him. I don't know the full story, but it doesn't sound right." I laughed it off, but her words stayed in my head like a splinter. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room staring at the photo of Xavier as a boy, smiling with ice cream dripping down his chin. Could it be true? Could the woman I welcomed into our family really be up to something? I told myself not to believe gossip. I reminded myself of kindness, of empathy. Things I taught Xavier since he was little. We don't jump to conclusions. We don't judge without proof. That's what I believed in. But then came the day Angela snapped at me over something small. I had stopped by to drop off a casserole, just being a mother, and she said, "You can't just show up whenever you like, Nancy. This is our home." The word stung. It wasn't what she said, but how she said it, cold, like I was an intruder instead of family. Xavier was in the other room and didn't hear it. I smiled and walked away, but inside, I felt something shift. A few weeks later, Gabriel, an old neighbor of mine who had known Xavier since childhood, paid me a visit. Gabriel was quiet, not the type to meddle in other people's business. So when he sat in my kitchen and said, "Nancy, I think you should keep an eye on Angela," my stomach dropped. "Why?" I asked. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Because I saw her with someone else, and it didn't look like a cousin or a friend." That was the moment the seed of doubt grew roots in my heart. Still, I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. Until that night. The night I heard their whispers, the night I saw them together in a way that made me question everything. And that's when I decided I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. I needed to watch. I needed to know the truth. That decision would change everything. Because the more I watched, the more I saw, and what I saw would lead me down a path I never expected. A path of lies, betrayal, and revenge. But that night, as I hid in the shadows of Xavier's home, listening to the whispers that weren't meant for me, I didn't know how deep the darkness ran. I only knew one thing. Nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. And just when I thought I had seen enough, I heard footsteps coming down the hall. The doorknob turned, slowly, and the light from the bedroom spilled out into the hallway. The doorknob turned with a slow, creaking sound, and I froze where I stood. My heart slammed so hard in my chest, I thought for sure they'd hear it. I pressed myself tighter against the wall, my body trembling as the bedroom door opened wider. For a second, all I saw was light spilling into the dark hallway. Then Xavier stepped out. His face looked tired, his eyes sunken as if he hadn't slept in days. He rubbed the back of his neck, muttering something I couldn't make out. Behind him, Angela's voice floated out, sharp and impatient. "Don't forget what we talked about. If she suspects anything, it's over." Xavier sighed. "I know. I'll handle it." And then his footsteps turned in my direction. I swear I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. If he walked 2 steps further, he would see me standing there, hidden in the shadows. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I thought, this is it. He's going to find me. He's going to know I heard everything. Just as his eyes lifted, a phone rang inside the bedroom. Angela cursed under her breath. Xavier turned back. "I'll get it." He disappeared into the room, pulling the door halfway shut behind him. I let out a shaky breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My knees felt like jelly, but I forced myself to move. Quietly, step by step, I crept down the stairs, out the front door, and into the cool Ohio night. When the fresh air hit my face, I nearly collapsed. My heart was still racing, but my mind was sharper than it had been in weeks. I knew now I wasn't imagining things. Something was wrong. Something dangerous. But what exactly? That was the question that haunted me as I drove home in silence. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold before I even touched it. I stared out the window at my garden, the same garden Xavier used to help me weed as a boy, and wondered, when did everything change? How did my sweet, kind son become someone who could whisper behind my back about keeping secrets from me? I wanted to call him. I wanted to demand answers. But a voice inside me, the same voice that told me to hide instead of barging into that room, said, "Not yet. Watch. Be patient." So I decided to wait. The days that followed were slow, almost painfully so. I kept up my routines, walking to the market, attending church, baking bread to share with neighbors. On the surface, I was just Nancy, the widow who smiled kindly at everyone. But inside, my heart was heavy, my mind spinning with questions. Priska noticed. One afternoon, she dropped by unannounced, carrying a bag of apples from her yard. "Nancy," she said, narrowing her eyes, "you look like you haven't slept in a week. What's going on?" I forced a smile. "Oh, you know me. Just getting old." She wasn't convinced. Priska leaned closer. "It's about Xavier, isn't it?" I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. Priska sighed and put a hand on mine. Listen, I know you love your son. I know you don't want to believe anything bad. But love doesn't mean blindness. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is face the truth, even if it hurts. Her words sank deep. For years, I had taught Xavier that kindness mattered above all, that we should see the good in people, give them chances, forgive their mistakes. But was I confusing kindness with weakness? Was I letting Angela walk all over me in the name of being understanding? I didn't answer her then, but I thought about it all night. The next week, I decided to act. Not by confronting Xavier, not yet, but by watching more closely. I visited their house again, this time with a smile and a tray of muffins. Angela opened the door, her face tight with annoyance. "Oh, it's you," she said flatly. "Just thought I'd bring some muffins." "Fresh from the oven," I replied, keeping my tone cheerful. She sighed but let me in. Xavier was on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. His shoulders slumped when he saw me, like he'd been carrying a weight too heavy for him. For a moment, my heart ached with the urge to hug him and say everything would be okay. But I stayed calm. We made small talk. I asked about work, about their plans for the weekend. But I was watching, really watching. Angela's hand on Xavier's arm wasn't loving. It was gripping, like she was holding him in place. Her smile was thin, her eyes cold. And Xavier? He answered my questions, but his voice was hollow, like someone who had lost himself. When I left that day, I knew one thing for sure. Xavier wasn't free. But free from what? From her? From something bigger? That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. "Be kind, but not blind," I wrote. Empathy doesn't mean letting people hurt you. Sometimes love means fighting for the truth, even when it breaks your heart. Still, the pieces didn't fit together. And then came the night that changed everything again. It was a Friday. I had just finished washing dishes when Gabriel knocked on my door. His face was pale, his voice urgent. "Nancy, I need to talk to you." Now, I let him in, my stomach already twisting. Gabriel sat at my table, his hands trembling. "I wasn't going to tell you this, but I can't keep quiet anymore." I saw Xavier again, and Angela, and someone else. They weren't arguing, Nancy. They were planning something. My breath caught. Planning what? He swallowed hard. "I don't know exactly, but I heard your name, and it didn't sound good." The room spun around me. My name. My own son and his wife were saying things about me. Planning something. "Are you sure?" I whispered. Gabriel nodded. "Dead sure. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." And just like that, my world tilted on its axis again. I felt fear, but I also felt something else burning inside me, something fierce. If they were planning something against me, I wouldn't just sit back and let it happen. I had been kind my whole life, patient, trusting, but now it was time to protect myself. I stood up from the table, my voice steady. Then I need to find out exactly what they're planning. And when I do, they'll regret ever thinking they could play me. Gabriel looked at me with wide eyes. "Nancy, what are you going to do?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know yet. All I knew was this: kindness had its limits, and I was about to find mine. Just as Gabriel was about to say more, a loud knock echoed through the house. Both of us froze. It was late, too late for a friendly visit. I walked slowly to the door, my heart pounding. When I opened it, I saw something that made the blood drain from my face. Standing there in the dark was Angela. Her smile was wide, but her eyes were cold. "Hello, Nancy," she said sweetly. "We need to talk." Angela stood in the doorway, her smile stretched too wide, like a mask that didn't quite fit her face. Behind me, Gabriel stiffened in his chair, his eyes glued to her like she was a rattlesnake about to strike. I gripped the edge of the doorframe to steady myself. "Angela, it's late." Her smile didn't falter. "I know, but this couldn't wait." I opened the door halfway, blocking her from stepping in. "What's so urgent?" She tilted her head, her eyes glinting under the porch light. "Xavier told me you've been worried, listening to people, asking questions. I just wanted to clear the air." My heart skipped. So, they already suspected. My mind screamed at me to stay calm. I forced a small smile. I don't know what you mean. I haven't been asking questions. Angela leaned in closer, lowering her voice. Nancy, I like you. I really do. But you need to stop meddling. You're going to ruin things for Xavier. For me. For all of us. Behind me, Gabriel shifted in his seat. The sound caught Angela's attention, and her eyes flicked past my shoulder. For the briefest second, her smile cracked. Oh, she said coolly. I didn't realize you had company. I didn't move. Good night, Angela. I'll see you another time. And before she could say more, I shut the door. For a moment, silence filled the house. Then Gabriel whispered, Nancy, that woman gives me chills. I leaned against the door, my chest rising and falling. She knows, I said quietly. She knows I've started watching. Gabriel frowned. So what do we do? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that Angela's warning wasn't just words. It was a threat. And threats meant danger. The next day, I tried to distract myself with small things, watering my plants, folding laundry, writing letters to old friends. But my mind kept circling back to Angela's smile, her words, her tone. Later that afternoon, I drove into town for groceries. The cashier, a young woman named Angela too, but everyone called her Angie to avoid confusion, greeted me with a smile. Hi, Miss Nancy. You look tired today. I forced a chuckle. Just one of those weeks, Angie. She scanned my items, then lowered her voice. Hey, I probably shouldn't say this, but I saw your daughter-in-law yesterday, at the diner. She wasn't with Xavier. She was with another man. My hand froze halfway to my purse. Are you sure? Angie nodded quickly. I know what I saw. They were sitting real close, talking low, like they didn't want to be overheard. Looked secretive. I thanked her, my mind reeling. First Gabriel, now Angie. How many more people had seen something I tried so hard to ignore? When I got home, I sat on the porch, staring out at the quiet Ohio street. I thought about kindness, about forgiveness, about turning the other cheek. But I also thought about survival, about the way Angela's eyes had looked at me last night. Cold, calculated. That evening, Priska stopped by again, carrying a loaf of bread. She sat with me on the porch, listening as I told her everything. Angela's visit, the threat, Angie's words at the store. Priska shook her head. Nancy, you've always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. But sometimes people don't deserve it. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is protect yourself. Her words reminded me of something my husband used to say. Kindness is a gift. Don't give it to people who'll use it as a weapon. For the first time, I understood what he meant. The next few days passed quietly. Too quietly. Angela didn't show up at my door again. Xavier didn't call. I kept waiting for something to happen, for the other shoe to drop. But the silence stretched on, thick and heavy. I told myself maybe it was over. Maybe Angela's visit was just a scare tactic, and now she'd leave me alone. But deep down, I knew better. And I was right. On the fifth night, just after midnight, I was woken by a sound outside. A crunch of gravel. Footsteps on my porch. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Slowly, I crept to the window and peeked out through the curtains. There, standing in the moonlight, was Xavier. But it wasn't the son I remembered. His face looked blank, his eyes distant. And in his hand, he held something that glinted in the dark. A crowbar. I gasped and stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth. Why was my son standing outside my house in the middle of the night with a crowbar? And why did his expression look like a man who had been told to do something he didn't want to do, but had no choice? The sight of Xavier standing in the moonlight with that crowbar in his hand nearly made my heart stop. He wasn't moving, just standing there at the edge of my porch, staring at my front door as if waiting for something or someone to give him permission. I pressed myself against the wall, peeking through the curtain with trembling fingers. My son, my sweet boy who once cried when he accidentally broke a neighbor's window with his baseball, now standing outside his mother's home in the dead of night with a weapon. What was he planning to do? The thought twisted my stomach. My first instinct was to fling open the door, call his name, shake him back into himself. But something held me back. I remembered Angela's voice, sharp and commanding. Don't forget what we talked about. If she suspects anything, it's over. Was this Angela's doing? Was she the one pulling the strings, turning my son into something I didn't recognize? I stood frozen, watching as Xavier shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His grip on the crowbar tightened, then loosened, then tightened again. He looked like a man trapped in his own body, fighting some unseen battle. Minutes felt like hours, and then, without warning, Xavier turned. He walked back down the porch steps, across the yard, and disappeared into the night. I sank to the floor, tears stinging my eyes. Relief washed over me, but it was tangled with something darker, fear. Fear of what could have happened if he had come inside. Fear of what Angela might be pushing him to do. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room chair, staring at the door, waiting for the sound of footsteps to return. But they never did. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I drove to Gabriel's house, my hands gripping the wheels so tightly they ached. He opened the door, surprised to see me so early. "Nancy? What's wrong?" I told him everything. The footsteps, the crowbar, the way Xavier looked like a stranger. Gabriel listened silently, his jaw tightening with each word. When I finished, he let out a long breath. "That woman," he muttered, shaking his head. "She's poisoning him. I don't know how, but she is." I leaned forward. "Gabriel, he's my son. I can't just give up on him. I have to find a way to reach him before it's too late." Gabriel looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but you can't do this alone. You need help." I frowned. "Help from who?" He hesitated, then said, "Issa. You remember Issa, right? My cousin's boy. He works in private security now. If anyone can keep an eye on things without being noticed, it's him." I remembered Issa, a quiet, serious young man who had grown up down the road. I hadn't seen him in years. "You think he'd help?" I asked. Gabriel nodded. "For you?" "Absolutely." Later that afternoon, Issa showed up at my house. He was taller than I remembered, with broad shoulders and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He listened carefully as I explained the situation, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he crossed his arms. If Xavier showed up here with a crowbar, it wasn't his idea. Somebody's manipulating him. I can find out who, but you have to let me handle it quietly. I nodded, though my chest ached at the thought of spying on my own son. But I knew this wasn't really about Xavier. It was about Angela. The next few days passed in tense silence. Issa moved like a shadow, sometimes parked across the street, sometimes walking by the house, as if casually passing through. He updated me in short bursts. "Angela meets with someone on Tuesdays. Xavier's been pulling cash from his account, large amounts. They argue when they think no one's around." Every detail tightened the knot in my stomach. What were they planning? Why did they need so much money? And why was my name part of their whispered conversations? I tried to keep myself grounded by sticking to my routines. Church on Sunday, coffee with Priska on Wednesday, gardening in the afternoons. But even in those quiet moments, fear lingered at the edges. One evening, Priska and I sat on my porch, sipping sweet tea. The sun was setting, painting the Ohio sky in shades of orange and pink. For a moment, it almost felt normal. "You've always been the kindest person I know," Priska said suddenly, her eyes soft. "But kindness doesn't mean you have to let people hurt you. Promise me you'll remember that." I squeezed her hand. "I promise." That night, I felt a flicker of strength. Maybe I wasn't powerless after all. Maybe I could fight back, not with anger or violence, but with patience, with proof, with the truth. But the next morning, Issa showed up at my door with news that shattered whatever peace I had left. "Nancy," he said, his voice low. "I followed Angela last night. She wasn't alone. She met with a man outside of town. They exchanged something, an envelope, and I heard your name again." I gripped the edge of the doorframe, my knees weak. "An envelope? What was in it?" Issa shook his head. "Couldn't see, but it was thick. Could have been cash. Could have been documents. Either way, it's bad." My mind spun. Cash? Documents? And why was my name always at the center of it? Issa continued, "There's more. I overheard enough to know they're planning something soon. Within days. Whatever it is, it involves you. I stared at him, my chest tight. So what do we do? Before Issa could answer, the sound of tires crunching on gravel made us both turn. A black SUV had pulled into my driveway. The windows were tinted, the engine humming low. My stomach dropped as the driver's door opened, and out stepped Angela. But she wasn't alone. Two men climbed out behind her, tall, broad-shouldered, their eyes cold. One of them carried a briefcase. Angela smiled at me across the yard, her voice sweet as poison. Nancy, we really need to talk. And this time, you don't get to shut the door. Angela's heels clicked against the gravel as she crossed the yard toward me, the two men flanking her like bodyguards. My stomach twisted into knots. Behind me, Issa shifted his stance, his body coiled like a spring, ready for whatever this was. Angela's smile was the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Nancy, you've been avoiding me. That hurts my feelings. I stayed rooted in the doorway, one hand gripping the frame so tightly my knuckles turned white. What do you want, Angela? Her gaze flicked to Issa, then back to me. Relax. I just came to clear a few things up. These are friends of mine, business associates. She gestured to the men, who stood stone-faced, their presence alone enough to make my chest tighten. One of them set the briefcase on the hood of the SUV, snapping it open just enough for me to catch a glimpse of what was inside. Stacks of cash. Thick stacks, bound tight with rubber bands. My breath caught. What is this? Angela tilted her head, her tone syrupy sweet. It's an opportunity. For you. For Xavier. For all of us. Issa stepped forward slightly, his voice steady but sharp. You should leave, Angela. Her eyes narrowed at him. And who are you supposed to be? Security. She chuckled, the sound cold and humorless. Nancy doesn't need a babysitter. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice not to shake. Say what you came to say, Angela. She smiled wider. Fine. Here's the deal. Xavier and I were working on something important. Something that requires discretion. You, unfortunately, have been snooping, listening to people who don't know what they're talking about. That puts you in a difficult position. My heart pounded. What kind of position? Her smile vanished. The kind where you either choose to be with us or against us. The words hung heavy in the air. Behind me, Issa tensed, ready to move if things went south. The men beside Angela didn't flinch, their eyes locked on me like predators sizing up prey. I thought about Xavier, about the crowbar, about the hollow look in his eyes. Was this what Angela had reduced him to? A pawn in some scheme involving envelopes and briefcases of cash. I straightened my back, forcing strength into my voice. I won't be bullied in my own home. Angela's eyes glinted with something sharp. This isn't bullying, Nancy. It's mercy. I'm giving you a chance to stay safe, to stay comfortable. She gestured toward the briefcase. Take it. Call it a gesture of goodwill. All you have to do is stop asking questions. Stop digging. Let Xavier and me handle everything. I stared at the money, the sheer weight of it pressing on my chest. I could feel Issa's eyes on me, waiting to see what I would do. For a moment, I imagined it, taking the money, closing the door, pretending none of this was happening, living out my days in peace, even if it meant turning a blind eye. But then I remembered my journal. Be kind, but not blind. The words burned in my mind. I shook my head. I don't want your money, and I won't stop asking questions. Angela's smile slipped for the first time. Her eyes went cold, her voice low. Then you've made your choice. She snapped the briefcase shut, and the men flanking her stepped forward. Issa immediately moved in front of me, his body a shield. Leave. Now, he said firmly. Angela stared at me for a long, tense moment. Then she chuckled softly, shaking her head. You really don't know what you're getting yourself into, Nancy. But don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. With that, she turned, signaling to her men. They climbed back into the SUV, slammed the doors, and drove off into the night, the roar of the engine echoing in the quiet street. When the sound faded, I realized I had been holding my breath. I leaned against the doorframe, my whole body trembling. Issa turned to me, his jaw tight. You did the right thing. But this isn't over. That was a warning. I nodded weakly, though my heart felt like it might break. My son was caught in the middle of this mess, and now Angela had made it clear I was a target. The following days were quieter, though the silence felt like a storm waiting to break. Issa kept a close watch, his car parked discreetly down the street. Gabriel checked in daily, bringing food, sitting with me in the evenings so I wouldn't feel alone. Priska came by often, her warmth a small comfort in the darkness creeping around my life. One afternoon, Priska brought her granddaughter, little Emily, who was barely 6 years old. The child ran through my garden, laughing, her hair catching the sunlight. For a moment, the heaviness in my chest lifted. I remembered what life was supposed to feel like. Light, simple, full of love. Priska caught me watching and smiled. That's why you keep fighting, Nancy. For moments like these. I nodded, my throat tight. That evening, as I sat with a cup of tea, I thought long and hard about my next move. I couldn't keep waiting for Angela to strike again. I needed to get ahead of her. But how? Issa suggested documenting everything. Angela's threats, the cash, the late-night visit with Xavier. If we build a record, we'll have leverage. Something to use if this goes to the authorities. It made sense, but the thought of dragging Xavier's name into it tore at me. He wasn't the villain. He was caught in her web. Still, I agreed. We had to start somewhere. The next morning, Issa drove me into town to buy a small recorder. My plan was simple. The next time Angela showed up, I'd get proof. Not just whispers or suspicions, evidence. But I didn't have to wait long. That very night, as I sat by the window, the recorder in my pocket, I saw headlights sweep across my yard. Another car. I braced myself, expecting Angela's SUV. But when the door opened, it wasn't her. It was Xavier. Alone. He walked up to the porch slowly, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. He knocked softly on the door, almost like the boy I used to know. I opened it cautiously. Xavier? His eyes met mine, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of the son I had raised. His voice broke as he whispered, "Mom, I need your help. I can't do this anymore." Tears filled my eyes. I pulled him inside, shutting the door quickly behind us. But before I could say a word, Xavier dropped to his knees, his hands shaking. "She's going to kill me, Mom. If I don't do what she says, if I don't go through with it, she'll kill me." My blood ran cold. Xavier was on his knees in my living room, his body shaking like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. His words echoed in my head, "She's going to kill me, Mom. If I don't do what she says, if I don't go through with it, she'll kill me." I knelt down beside him, my hands trembling as I cupped his face. "Xavier, look at me. What is she making you do?" His eyes darted toward the window, like he was afraid Angela might be outside listening. His voice was barely a whisper. "She wants me to sign everything over to her. The house, the accounts, even your property, Mom. She says once it's done, we'll be free. But I know better. I've seen what she's capable of." My stomach turned. "Everything? Even my house?" He nodded, tears spilling down his face. "She said if you don't agree, she'll make it look like an accident." His voice cracked on the last word. I felt the air leave my lungs. Angela wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous. I pulled Xavier into my arms, rocking him like I used to when he was a child with scraped knees. "You don't have to do this, baby. We'll find a way out. Together." But even as I said it, my mind raced. Angela had money, men, power I didn't understand, and my son was already tangled in her web. When Xavier finally calmed, I made him a cup of tea and sat him at the kitchen table. Issa came in quietly from his watch outside, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Xavier. "What happened?" Issa asked, his voice calm but firm. I explained everything, Angela's demands, Xavier's fear, the threats against me. Issa listened, his jaw tightening with each word. When I finished, he placed a steady hand on Xavier's shoulder. "You're not alone in this, but you need to be honest. Has she done anything illegal that you can prove?" Xavier hesitated, then nodded. "She launders money. That's what those envelopes are about. She uses me to move it around. If I refuse, she hits me. Or worse." He pulled up his sleeve, revealing a bruise on his arm. My chest ached at the sight. I reached for him, my voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" He shook his head. Because she said she'd hurt you if I did. The room went silent. I felt rage boiling inside me, hotter than anything I had ever felt. This woman had broken my son, turned him into a prisoner in his own life, and now she was threatening me. Issa broke the silence. We need to get evidence. Proof that she's laundering money, threatening Xavier, planning to take your property. Once we have that, we can take it to the authorities. Xavier looked at him, his eyes wide with fear. You don't know her. She has people everywhere. If she finds out I'm talking to you, she'll... Issa cut him off firmly. Let her try. I don't scare easy. I place my hand over Xavier's. You've lived in fear long enough. It ends now. For the next hour, we talked quietly, planning our next steps. Xavier agreed to wear a recorder Issa provided. The idea was simple. Capture Angela admitting to her crimes. Once we had her words on tape, we could go to the police. It was risky, too risky, but it was the only path forward. By the time Xavier left that night, slipping back into the darkness with Issa shadowing him from a distance, I felt both terrified and hopeful. Terrified of what Angela might do if she suspected, but hopeful that my son was finally reaching for freedom. The next few days crawled by. I busied myself with small things, cooking, cleaning, tending the garden, but my mind was always on Xavier. Was he safe? Was Angela suspicious? Was the recorder working? One evening, I sat with Gabriel on the porch, watching the fireflies dance in the humid Ohio air. I told him what Xavier had confessed, though I kept the details vague. Gabriel listened quietly, his eyes dark with concern. Nancy, he said finally, you've always been strong. Stronger than you know. But this is dangerous. If Angela feels cornered, she won't back down. She'll strike. I sighed. I know, but I can't let her destroy my son. Or my family. He nodded, squeezing my hand. Then you fight smart. Don't just play defense. Hit back. His words echoed in my mind long after he left. For so long, I had lived by kindness, by patience, by turning the other cheek. But Angela had crossed a line. She wasn't just cruel, she was ruthless. And the only way to deal with ruthless people was to stop letting them hold all the power. The next night, Xavier came by again, this time alone. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he pulled a small recorder from his pocket and set it on the table. I got it, he whispered. Everything. I picked up the device with trembling fingers. My heart pounded as I pressed play. Angela's voice filled the room, sharp and commanding. You'll get your mother to sign the deed. Or I swear to God, Xavier, she won't wake up one morning. Do you hear me? This isn't optional. The money comes first, and if she's in the way, we'll remove her. Permanently. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking. My son looked at me with tears in his eyes. Now you know, Mom. She wasn't bluffing. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The rage inside me burned hotter than fire, but beneath it was something stronger, resolve. I wasn't going to let Angela destroy us. Issa, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. This is enough to go to the police, but we have to be careful. If she finds out you have this, she'll act fast. Xavier's voice shook. She already suspects. She keeps watching me, asking questions. I don't think we have much time. I looked at both of them, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. Then we go tomorrow. First thing. We take this to the police and we end this. But I should have known nothing with Angela was that simple. The next morning, as I gathered my things to leave for the police station, a sound shattered the quiet. Tires screeching. A car pulling up fast. I looked out the window and felt my blood turn to ice. Angela's SUV was back. Only this time, it wasn't just her. At least 3 cars followed, men spilling out of them. Their faces hard, their movements sharp. Angela stepped out last, her smile cruel, her voice carrying across the yard. Nancy, Xavier, I think it's time we had a little family meeting. Angela stood in the middle of my yard like she owned the place, her red dress glowing against the early morning light. Around her, men spread out like a pack of wolves, their movements sharp and practiced. At least 7 of them. My throat went dry. Xavier froze beside me at the window, his face pale. She knows, Mom. She knows. Issa was already moving. He grabbed his phone, muttering into it quickly, probably calling Gabriel or backup. Then he looked at me. His jaw was tight. Get away from the windows. Stay low. Don't open that door. Angela cupped her hands around her mouth and called out sweetly, Nancy, Xavier, don't make this harder than it has to be. Come outside, and we'll settle this like adults. My heart pounded, so hard I could feel it in my throat. I whispered to Xavier, don't move. Don't say a word. But he was trembling. She'll kill us if we don't go out there. Issa shook his head. No, going out there means giving her control. Inside, we have the advantage. Angela's voice sharpened. If you make me come in there, Nancy, I won't be so polite. You've been asking questions, snooping where you don't belong, and now you think you can run to the police? You don't understand who you're dealing with. She gestured to her men, and two of them started toward the porch. I grabbed Xavier's hand, holding it tight. We're not letting her win. Not this time. Issa moved quickly, locking the doors, checking the back windows. We can hold them off. But if they break in, you get to the basement. Understand? I nodded, though my knees felt weak. Xavier's hand was clammy in mine, his fear radiating through him. The first bang rattled the front door, followed by another. My whole body jumped with each slam. Angela's men were trying to break it down. Angela's voice rang out, mocking, Don't be stubborn, Nancy. You're too old for this kind of stress. Why don't you let me take care of things for you? My blood boiled. Old? Weak. That woman had no idea what kind of strength I had left in me. Issa pulled a small handgun from his jacket, checked the chamber, and stood firm at the door. You're not getting in, he muttered under his breath. The banging grew louder, harder. One of the windows cracked. My heart raced. If they got in... I looked at Xavier, who was trembling, his lips moving silently in prayer. I reached up and cupped his cheek. You're stronger than you think, baby. She doesn't own you anymore. Then, suddenly, the banging stopped. Silence. I held my breath, listening. Angela's heels clicked against the porch, slow and deliberate. Then her voice came, low and sharp. All right, Nancy. Have it your way. But don't say I didn't warn you. Her men pulled back, retreating to the cars. Engines roared to life. One by one, the vehicles rolled down the road until the yard was empty again. The silence afterward was deafening. I sank into a chair, my whole body trembling. Xavier collapsed beside me, his face buried in his hands. Issa lowered his gun but didn't relax. She's testing us. Next time she won't knock. I looked at him, my voice barely steady. Then we need to move fast. We have the recording. We go to the police today. No more waiting. Xavier lifted his head, his eyes filled with fear and shame. Mom, what if the police are already in her pocket? She has money connections. What if they don't help us? It was a thought I hadn't wanted to face, but deep down, I knew he wasn't wrong. Angela's kind of power didn't stop at the edge of my yard. It reached further, deeper. Issa rubbed the back of his neck, pacing. We can't assume all of them are compromised. If we find the right officer, someone outside her circle, we have a chance. I nodded, gripping Xavier's hand again. We're not giving up. Not now. For the rest of the morning, the house felt like a cage. Every sound outside made us jump. Every passing car set my heart racing. Angela had made her move, and though she pulled back, I knew it wasn't over. She was planning something bigger. Around noon, Gabriel arrived. He walked in with his usual calm, though his eyes sharpened when he saw Xavier slumped at the table, pale and exhausted. So it's true, Gabriel muttered. She came here with her crew. Issa nodded, tried to force them out. She'll be back. Gabriel's face darkened. Then we hit her first. I've got contacts. People who don't like Angela. We pull them in, make this bigger than her reach. Xavier shook his head quickly. No. If she finds out, she'll kill everyone. You don't understand what she's capable of. Gabriel leaned down, his voice firm. No, son. You don't understand what we're capable of when we fight back. Something in Gabriel's words lit a fire in me. Angela wasn't the only one with strength. I had friends. I had people willing to stand by me. I wasn't alone. For the first time in days, Xavier seemed to take a breath without shaking. He looked at me, then at Gabriel, then finally at Issa. His voice was soft, almost childlike. What if we can't stop her? I squeezed his hand, meeting his eyes. Then we keep trying, because giving up isn't an option. That evening, Priska stopped by, bringing a basket of food. She listened quietly as I told her everything. Her face grew pale, but her eyes burned with quiet strength. Nancy, you've always been the heart of this neighborhood. Everyone loves you. If Angela thinks she can isolate you, she's wrong. We won't let her win. Her words were like balm on an open wound. For so long, I had been carrying this weight alone. But now I realized I had a village. We ate together that night, laughter breaking through the tension for brief, fragile moments. Xavier even smiled once or twice, though the shadows never fully left his eyes. When night fell, Issa took his usual watch outside, Gabriel stayed in the guest room, and Xavier slept on the couch, too afraid to be alone. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind restless. Angela wouldn't stop, not until she had what she wanted, or until someone stopped her. I whispered a prayer, not just for safety, but for courage. And then, just as my eyes began to close, the shrill sound of my phone cut through the silence. I fumbled for it, my heart racing. The screen lit up with an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello. A voice I knew all too well hissed through the line. Did you really think you could hide from me, Nancy? I know you've got Xavier. I know about the recording. And if you don't hand it over by tomorrow, you'll never see your sweet little granddaughter again. My blood froze. The phone slipped in my sweaty hands. Angela's voice still echoed in my ear. If you don't hand it over by tomorrow, you'll never see your sweet little granddaughter again. I couldn't breathe. My lips parted, but no sound came. My heart pounded, so violently I thought I might collapse right there in my bed. Angela, what are you talking about? I stammered, clutching the phone tighter. You leave Emily out of this. She's just a child. Angela chuckled, a sound so sharp it cut through my bones. Children are leverage, Nancy. You should know that by now. You have until tomorrow. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the glowing screen, my hand trembling so badly the phone nearly slipped from my grasp. Then the panic hit full force. I bolted out of bed, racing to the living room. Issa, Gabriel, my voice cracked with urgency. Wake up. It's Emily. She's in danger. Xavier jerked awake from the couch, his eyes wide. What? What about Emily? I clutched my chest, struggling to breathe as I explained, my words tumbling out in broken pieces. Angela just called. She knows about the recording. She said if I don't hand it over, we'll never see Emily again. The room erupted. Xavier leapt to his feet, shaking his head violently. No, she can't, she wouldn't, his voice broke. She knows Priska takes Emily to school every morning. Oh God, Mom, she'll do it. Gabriel cursed under his breath, already pulling his shoes on. We need to move. Right now. Emily cannot be left unprotected. Issa's face was carved from stone, his voice calm but urgent. Where is she tonight? I pressed a trembling hand to my forehead. Priska has her. Emily's been sleeping at her house this week while her parents are out of town. Issa grabbed his jacket. Then we go to Priska's. Now. The drive through the sleeping Ohio town felt endless, the silence broken only by Xavier's ragged breathing and Gabriel's whispered prayers. My mind raced with images of Emily, her small hands in mine, her laughter in the garden, the innocence in her eyes. The thought of Angela's claws reaching for her made bile rise in my throat. When we pulled up to Priska's house, the lights were off, but I could see a faint glow from the upstairs bedroom. My heart hammered until I saw Priska appear at the door in her nightgown, confusion written across her face. Nancy? What on earth? I pushed past her, tears streaming down my face. Where's Emily? Is she here? Is she safe? Priska blinked in shock. Of course she's safe. She's asleep upstairs. What's going on? Issa swept through the house with his usual efficiency, checking windows and doors. Gabriel followed him, every step purposeful. I clutched Priska's arm. Angela called me. She threatened Emily. She said if we don't hand over the recording, she'll take her. Priska's face drained of color. Her voice trembled. She threatened a child? I nodded, my throat too tight for words. Without hesitation, Priska rushed upstairs, returning moments later with a sleepy Emily in her arms. The little girl rubbed her eyes, her small voice soft. Grandma Nancy? Why are you crying? I gathered her close, burying my face in her hair. Nothing, baby. You're okay. You're safe. But inside, I knew safety was fragile. Angela had crossed another line, and this time she was aiming straight at the purest, most innocent part of my world. We gathered in the living room, the weight of the situation pressing on all of us. Xavier sat hunched over, his hands gripping his hair, rocking slightly. It's my fault. She's doing this because of me. She'll never stop until I give her what she wants. I shook my head firmly, my voice low but fierce. No, Xavier. This isn't your fault. This is her evil, and we're going to stop her. Issa leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes calculating. We need to move Emily. Angela knows she's here. This house isn't secure enough. I can take her somewhere safe until this blows over. Priska's hands tightened protectively around her granddaughter. Where? Where could possibly be safe from a woman like that? Gabriel's voice was steady. Somewhere Angela won't expect. I know a friend, retired state trooper, lives out in the countryside. Isolated. Armed. No one gets close without him knowing. Priska hesitated, her eyes darting to me. Nancy, do you trust this? I looked at Gabriel. His eyes met mine, unwavering. He was a man who had seen danger before, who knew how to stand his ground. Slowly I nodded. Yes, Emily will be safer with him than here. Priska held Emily closer, tears slipping down her cheeks. If anything happens to her... I placed my hand over hers. Nothing will happen. I promise. The decision was made. By dawn, Issa and Gabriel would take Emily out to Gabriel's friend's place. Priska wept quietly as she packed Emily's small bag, and I helped her, my hand shaking as I folded the child's tiny clothes. Emily, half asleep, kept asking why everyone was so worried. None of us had the heart to answer. When the sky began to lighten, Emily hugged me tightly around the neck. Bye, Grandma Nancy. I'll see you soon, right? I kissed her forehead, my tears soaking her hair. Yes, baby. I'll see you very soon. Be brave, okay? Just like we talked about. She nodded sleepily, her little arms tightening around my neck before Gabriel gently took her hand and led her to the car. I watched until the taillights disappeared down the road, my chest aching like something had been ripped from me. Back inside, Xavier sat on the couch, his face pale, his voice hoarse. She won't stop, Mom. She's not going to let us win. I sat beside him, gripping his hand. Then we fight harder. The rest of the morning passed in tense silence. Priska brewed coffee, though none of us drank much. Issa made calls, speaking quietly in the corner, while Xavier paced the floor, his nerves fraying by the minute. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. My hand shook as I picked it up, terrified it would be Angela. But it was Gabriel. His voice was calm but clipped. Emily's safe. My friends got her. We're locking everything down. Nobody's getting close. Relief washed over me so strongly I nearly collapsed. Thank God. But just as I ended the call, another message came through. This time it was a text. Unknown number. I opened it and my blood froze. A photo. It was of me, standing at the window of Priska's living room, taken just minutes ago. The message underneath read, "You can hide the girl, Nancy, but you can't hide yourself." My hands went numb. My phone slipped onto the floor with a thud. The headlights cut through the trees like two bright knives. They moved fast, straight down the long driveway toward the farmhouse. My legs felt heavy as lead. I could hear my heart beating so loud. I thought the whole world might hear it. Inside the farmhouse, the old dog barked until his voice was rough. The trooper's radio clicked and talked in quick bursts. I gripped the phone in my hand so tightly my knuckles hurt. The last thing I heard before the radio went quiet was the trooper yelling, "Get to the safe room. Now." Safe room. The word snapped something in me. I had never thought of myself as someone who could hide, but tonight I was a woman who would do anything to keep her family safe. Gabriel and Issa moved fast. They guided me down a narrow hallway into a small room with a heavy door. The trooper pushed the deadbolt and checked the windows. He set a chair against the door and put the radio where he could reach it. The place smelled like old wood and coffee. It felt like the last place on earth someone would think to look. Emily huddled in the corner with a blanket over her knees, and she squeezed my hand so tight I could feel the small bones. Her eyes were round like saucers. "Grandma Nancy," she whispered, "are we going to be okay?" I swallowed and smiled, even though my throat was thick with fear. "Yes, baby. We're going to be okay. We are together." Outside, the headlights stopped. There was a long, terrible silence. For a moment, I thought maybe the men had driven away. Then slow steps came up the gravel, and the crunching sounded closer. Someone rapped on the farmhouse door. A voice called out my name, a voice I knew too well. It was one of Angela's men, deep and cold. "Open up, Nancy. We know you're in there." "Don't make it hard," the voice said. The trooper tightened his jaw. He whispered to Gabriel, "Don't open. I'll call backup." He put his hand to the radio, but there was no answer. Just static and far-off sirens, weak and fading. I felt like every blood in my body had turned cold. The man's voice came again, louder, very close to the door. "We can do this easy, Nancy, or we can do it the hard way." The words were a knife. Gabriel looked at me like he wanted to say something brave, but his face was pale. Issa held the little girl like she might disappear if he let go. The trooper moved the chair so it leaned against the door even harder. He checked the bolt one more time. A sudden noise made us all jump. A loud crash sounded outside, a sound like metal hitting wood. A window somewhere on the property broke. The dog began to howl. "Run," someone cried quietly. "There's a side path to the woods. We can go and the trooper will cover us." Gabriel shook his head. "No, we stay together. We leave only if they break in. Splitting up will make them pick us off." The radio crackled again. Officer Harlan's voice came, thin and breathless. "I'm here. I've got County on the way. Hold tight." Relief prickled like cold air across my skin, but it did not erase the fear. The trooper looked at me. "If they break in, head to the cellar under the pantry. There's a hidden door. I'll guide you." My knees nearly gave. The trooper's plan made sense. It sounded safe. It sounded like a way out. And yet the thought of running down a musty cellar in the dark with a little child made me feel older than my years. The pounding on the door came like a drum. It was hard and frightening. The men outside wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to open and give them what they wanted. I thought of the recorder. I thought of Angela's voice saying she would make everything disappear. I thought of Xavier's hollow eyes and the bruise on his arm. I thought of Emily's drawing of the sun. I wasn't going to let them snuff that sun out. The door shook once, twice. The chair leaned hard against the wood. Then a sharp, bright light flashed through the crack under the door. A shadow moved past the window. The trooper whispered, "When I say go, you go. Stay low. Don't make a sound." I cupped Emily's hand, and she clung to my fingers like a lifeline. Issa's patch of shoulder pressed into my back. Gabriel's jaw was set like stone. The door slammed. A man's voice outside barked, "You heard me. Open now." There was another crash, and the heavy latch on the door snapped with a loud, ugly sound. Splinters shot across the porch. For a sliver of a heartbeat, I knew they had gotten through. Then the lights inside the safe room went out. The trooper must have cut the power. The radio hissed with static. I felt the darkness creep over everything like a heavy blanket. My hand found Emily's hair and I held her head close. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow steps on the floor above us. The noise of men moving. One of them laughed, a mean, soft sound. "Where are they hiding?" the laugh said. I put my lips on Emily's hair and whispered, "Be brave. We are brave." In the dark, I heard the trooper breathe in and out. Then he touched my hand, light as a bird. "On my mark," he said, "we move." His whisper was steady. 3, 2. At 1. The cellar door slammed open behind us and cold, damp air flooded the safe room as someone pulled us there. The stairs smelled of wet earth. The trooper guided us down, his hand firm on my back. The little light from a flashlight winked and then vanished as we dropped below ground. We crouched in the dark cellar where the air was cool and smelled of stone. The trooper barricaded the hidden door with a thick wooden beam, and pushed the shelf back so it looked like a wall again. We were trapped, hidden, silent. Then, muffled through the floorboards above, voices came. Men's voices. Angela's voice broke like ice through them, sharp and soft at the same time. "Look," she said, "we don't have to hurt anyone. We just want the recorder. Hand it over and we'll go. You'll be left with nothing but your pride." A man answered, "She's got friends. They'll bring the police." Angela laughed. "Your friends will be busy counting their money. We have people everywhere." Her voice moved like a cold wind. I felt something in my chest split like glass. Her words were meant to make us small, to make us believe we had no allies. But then, through the silence, a new sound came, distant but growing. The thump of tires on dirt, the rumble of engines. The trooper had called for backup. The county men were coming. Angela's voice rose sharper. "They're stalling. Take the girl and bring me Nancy if you must. I'll cut the deal myself." No, I wanted to shout, to run, to grab Emily and run up those stairs. But my mouth was filled with dust and fear. I held on to Emily and let the trooper's fingers curl around mine. A single beam of light moved across the cellar wall like a slow sun. In the hush, I heard someone above move with hard steps toward the cellar door. The bolt on the beam scraped. The shelf shifted. Then a loud crash sounded from the farmhouse roof. The sound made every hair on my arm stand up. It was followed by the sharp report of a shout. Someone above yelled, "Police! Everyone get down!" For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The trooper's hand tightened on mine. Then, above the thud of boots and shouts, I heard a voice I did not expect to hear. Not Angela's, but another, young and clear. It was Xavier's voice, stronger than I had heard in weeks. "Get away from my family. Get away now." The cellar felt like it moved. My heart jumped into my throat. Xavier's voice came again, loud and fierce. The men above cursed. Footsteps ran. The farm gate creaked open with a long, strained sound. I pressed my face into Emily's hair and listened to the world change above our heads. The noise of cars, the yells of officers, gunshots in the distance, sharp and frightening. The trooper whispered, "Hold on. They've got them in a ring. Keep low." Then a shadow loomed by the small window of the cellar. A thin beam of light cut across the dark dirt wall, and for a second I could see outside, flashing red and blue. Officers moving with flashlights, a line of uniforms. Hope flared in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, we would get through this. But then, from somewhere farther away on the property, a gunshot cracked sharp and close. A man shouted in pain. A different voice, cool and cruel, sliced across the noise. "You think you can trap us? You think you can take Angela from us? We are not so small." My breath hitched. The trooper's whisper came like a prayer. "Stay down. Don't make a sound." The cellar door shook. The beam held a little longer. Outside, the clash of men and police filled the night. And in the hush that followed, a new sound crept through the floorboards, soft, deliberate footsteps. Someone was coming toward the cellar. Someone very close. Someone who knew where we were hiding. When the steps stopped right above us, I felt my soul freeze. A voice spoke slowly, right above our heads, a voice I knew like cold glass. "Nancy," the voice purred. "You picked the wrong people to hide with." The floorboard creaked, as if someone was stepping directly on the spot above the trooper's head. My fingers dug into Emily's blanket. The trooper's breath was a soft storm beside me. I closed my eyes and prayed. Then a whisper from the dark, "We can end this now. Give me the recorder and no one gets hurt." I opened my eyes. The cellar door began to creak as if the beam was about to give. And somewhere above, the sound of more engines was growing louder. I didn't know which would reach us first, help or harm. I could only hold Emily and listen to my own heart, which was pounding like a drum in a field of men. The beam scraped. The headlights shot through the trees, speeding toward the farmhouse. My heart hammered, so loud. I thought the men outside could hear it. Inside, the old dog barked like mad. The trooper rushed us into a hidden room at the back, bolted the door, and killed the lights. Emily clung to me, whispering, "Grandma, are we going to be okay?" "Yes, baby," I lied. "We're together." Then came the pounding, heavy fists on the door. A cold voice outside called, "Open up, Nancy. Don't make this hard." The trooper shook his head. Stay down. Backup's on the way. But his radio spat only static. Glass broke somewhere. Boots scraped on the porch. Angela's voice slid in, sharp as a knife. We don't want blood. Hand over the recorder and this ends. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Issa pulled Emily close. The trooper whispered, if they breach, we move to the cellar. Quiet. The lock snapped. The door groaned. Splinters rained across the floor. My breath caught. Then, in the dark, the trooper pulled us through the pantry into a hidden cellar. Damp air swallowed us. He barred the door with a beam and shoved a shelf back in place. Above us, footsteps thundered. Angela's men searched. One laughed low. Angela herself spoke again, closer this time. You can't hide forever. Give me the recorder, or I'll take the girl. Emily buried her face in my chest. My whole body shook, but I held her tight. Then sirens, engines, shouts, police. Boots slammed on the porch, a voice barking. Sheriff's Department. Down now. Chaos broke upstairs. Men cursed. Officers yelled. A shot rang out, sharp and too close. And then I heard him. Xavier. His voice rang out, fierce and strong. Get away from my family. The cellar walls shook with the fight above. Hope surged through me, until the cellar beam scraped, the door shifting under pressure. A voice purred from directly overhead, calm and cruel. Angela. Nancy, you picked the wrong people to hide with. Give me the recorder and no one gets hurt. The beam groaned. Engines roared closer. Help or harm, one would reach us first. The cellar door creaked, about to break. The cellar beam moaned like it was alive. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Emily clutched me so tightly I thought her little hands would leave marks on my skin. Angela's voice slid through the floorboards, smooth and cruel. Nancy, I know you can hear me. Give me the recorder. Hand it over and this ends tonight. I didn't breathe. None of us did. The trooper kept one hand on the beam and one on his weapon. Issa held Emily tight, whispering steady nonsense to keep her calm. Gabriel crouched near the wall, sweat dripping down his face, his fists clenched like he was holding in years of regret. Above us, Boots stomped across the floorboards. The men were searching, flipping furniture, shouting to each other. One of them laughed. Another cursed. Then silence. Silence so deep it felt like the air had been sucked out of the world. And then, Xavier's voice broke through the chaos again. Stay away from my family. It was strong, fierce, nothing like the broken man I'd seen just weeks ago. He sounded alive again, protective, burning. For a heartbeat, pride filled my chest. But then fear returned because if Xavier was shouting, he was also exposed. The trooper whispered he's drawing them away. He's buying us time. I wanted to scream that he shouldn't be the bait, but my throat was locked. Outside, sirens grew louder. Police had arrived, but I knew Angela's men weren't the kind to surrender easily. They would rather burn everything down. The beam holding the cellar door scraped again. Someone above us was pushing hard. The wood creaked, cracked. The trooper motioned for silence. His finger pressed against his lips. He leaned toward the door, listening. Then he nodded slowly. Not yet. Not until I say. We waited. My heart pounded. Then a gunshot cracked so close it shook the ceiling dust down on us. Emily whimpered, and I held her head against my chest. A man screamed in pain upstairs. Boots thudded fast. Then a voice, Angela's voice, calm in the storm. Fall back. Don't waste time on police. Get the girl. Every muscle in my body froze. The girl. My Emily. The trooper swore under his breath. He pulled the shelf tighter against the door. But the beam was already splitting. I thought of every moment that had brought us here. The whispers, the blackmail, the late-night meetings, the threats. And now it all came down to this small room. This heavy beam, this little child hiding in my arms. And then, like God himself had stepped in, the outside exploded with lights. Red, blue, white. Dozens of headlights. Dozens of sirens. Voices boomed through megaphones. This property is surrounded. Drop your weapons. Hands in the air. Chaos followed. Shouts. Running, breaking glass. Another gunshot. Then another. The trooper's radio crackled alive at last. We've got them on the south side. Move to secure the house. Relief swept through me like a flood. My knees nearly gave out. For the first time, I believed we might actually get out alive. But then, as the officers stormed the house, a shadow fell across the cellar window. A face appeared in the glass, pale and twisted. One of Angela's men had slipped the net. His eyes locked on mine through the dirt-streaked glass. He smiled slow and mean. He tapped the barrel of his gun against the window once, twice, 3 times. I froze. My whole body screamed not to move. The trooper saw him and raised his own weapon, but the man was gone in a flash, melting into the night. The cellar fell silent again, except for Emily's small sobs. The trooper whispered, "He knows we're down here." And just as he spoke, the beam above us cracked with a sharp snap. The shelf shifted an inch. Dust poured down. Gabriel grabbed my arm. "They're coming through." Emily cried louder. Issa covered her mouth gently, whispering, "Shuh, you're safe." The trooper braced himself against the door, weapon raised. His face was set, grim. "When it opens, stay behind me. No matter what happens, you do not run unless I tell you." The wood splintered again. A hand forced its way through the crack. Fingers clawed, grabbing, pulling. I pressed Emily against me and closed my eyes. The door groaned, the beam shifted, and in the next heartbeat the cellar filled with blinding light as the door burst open. The cellar door burst open in a storm of splinters. Light poured in, blinding, white and harsh. A man's shadow filled the doorway, gun raised, teeth bared. Emily screamed. I covered her head and held her tight, my body the only shield I could give. Gabriel lunged forward, raw fear and rage propelling him, but the trooper shoved him back and took the lead. "Police, drop it now," the trooper roared. His voice was thunder in the tiny space. The man hesitated, his gun wavering. Then gunfire. A deafening crack that echoed through the cellar like the end of the world. The trooper fired first. The man crumpled in the doorway, weapon clattering down the steps. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. My ears rang. Emily sobbed against my chest. The trooper kicked the weapon away, breathing hard. "Move. Now. Stay behind me." We climbed out of the cellar into a farmhouse turned battlefield. Windows shattered, chairs overturned, broken glass everywhere. Officers swarmed the property, shouting commands, chasing shadows. Red and blue lights pulsed through the dark. Angela was gone. That realization cut through me sharper than the gunfire. She had slipped away in the chaos. Xavier stood by the porch, his shirt stained with dirt and sweat. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw both fear and fire. "Mom," he whispered, voice breaking. Then he ran to me, pulled me and Emily into his arms. For the first time in weeks, he felt solid again. Alive. But the battle wasn't over. Issa pointed toward the tree line. "She's running," he hissed. "Angela's running." And she was. A shadow darting through the woods, her long coat flaring behind her. 2 of her men lay cuffed on the ground. Another moaned with a bleeding leg. But Angela moved like smoke, always slipping through the cracks. "I'm going after her," Gabriel growled, fury in his eyes. "No," the trooper snapped. "She's dangerous. She'll use anyone against you. Stay with your family." But I knew. Deep in my bones, I knew we couldn't let her escape. If Angela vanished into the night, she'd come back harder, crueler, unstoppable. I put Emily in Xavier's arms. "Don't let her go," I whispered. "No matter what." Then I turned to the trooper. "We end this tonight." He studied me for a long, heavy moment. Then he nodded. "Stay behind me." We ran. Through the broken yard, across the gravel drive, into the woods where the trees swallowed the flashing lights. The night was thick, damp with the smell of earth and pine. Branches tore at my arms. My lungs burned. I could hear her ahead. Angela's breaths ragged, her boots snapping twigs. She wasn't far. The trooper raised his flashlight, cutting through the dark. The beam landed on her back, just as she stumbled over a root. For the first time, I saw her falter. She spun, gun raised, eyes wild. The light hit her face, pale and furious. "Stay back," she screamed. Her voice cracked. "Stay back, or I swear I'll end this." The trooper leveled his weapon. "Angela Monroe, drop it now." But her eyes locked on me. Not him. Me. This is your fault, Nancy, she hissed. Your son was weak until you came meddling. You should have stayed quiet. You should have let me finish what I started. I felt something inside me harden. Fear was still there, yes, but stronger than fear was love. Love for my son, for my granddaughter, for all of us who had been dragged into her storm. I stepped forward. My voice was steady. You won't hurt them again. Not tonight. Not ever. Angela's hand shook on the gun. Her eyes flickered, rage battling panic. Then she fired. The shot ripped through the trees. My ears screamed with the sound. I stumbled back, bracing for pain. But it wasn't me. The trooper grunted, staggered. His shoulder bled, but he didn't fall. He fired back, quick and sharp. Angela's gun flew from her hand. She screamed, dropped to her knees, clutching her arm. It was over. Officers crashed through the woods, lights flashing, voices shouting. They swarmed her, cuffing her, forcing her down. Angela fought like a wild animal, spitting, cursing, promising revenge. But it was useless now. I stood frozen, my body trembling from head to toe. Gabriel reached me first, grabbing my arms, his eyes wet. You're safe, he whispered. It's done. But I didn't feel safe. Not yet. Not until I saw Emily's face again. We stumbled back to the farmhouse, where Xavier was sitting on the porch steps, Emily curled in his lap, asleep at last. He looked up at me with eyes that were tired but clear, no longer clouded by fear. She's okay, he whispered. I touched Emily's hair, my heart finally beginning to believe. She's more than okay. She's free. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself breathe. The weeks that followed were not simple. Trials never are. Angela's lawyers tried to twist the story, to paint her as misunderstood, to downplay the threats and blackmail. But the recorder, the photos, and the testimony from Xavier, Gabriel, Issa, the trooper, and me told the truth. Angela was sentenced. Her men too. The network she thought made her untouchable crumbled under investigation. Xavier struggled, of course. Healing isn't neat. But with Priska by his side, with Emily's laughter filling the house again, he began to rebuild piece by piece. He worked, he prayed, he talked, he faced his guilt instead of drowning in it. And me. I found myself softer and stronger at the same time. I had faced a darkness I never imagined, and though it left scars, it also left lessons. Kindness matters, yes, but kindness is not weakness. Protecting your family is not meddling. It's love in its fiercest form. Sometimes, standing up means standing in the fire. Emily still draws sons with smiling faces. She still writes Grandma Nancy loves me under them. Every time I see one, I feel the weight of what we survived and the hope of what we are building. We are not the same as before, but we are alive. We are together, and that is enough.